Good evening, sci-fi movie nerds, and welcome to another episode of the Sci-Fi Movie Guide. This is weekly show number 29, and I am your host, Mike. So let's get started as we always do with Star Wars news. And guess what? Rogue One came out on the weekend, and I've seen it 4 times now. And this movie, for me, just keeps getting better and better. I keep finding new Easter eggs. It was a fantastic Star Wars insider movie, so I'm going to let you know right now, if you're a huge Star Wars fans and you've read a lot of the novels and the novelizations and watched the animated series Clone Wars Rebels and all those good kind of things, you're going to get a lot more out of this movie than the average movie goer that doesn't really follow Star Wars. I heard the guys on Collider say it's an inside baseball movie, so it's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that only big Star Wars fans will get. So I'm so happy that Lucasfilm put out a Star Wars movie for the Star Wars fans. Now, I went with somebody the third time I went to see it who isn't a huge Star Wars fan, and they just wanted to see this movie. And he said he really liked it, but it was, okay. It wasn't as good as The Force Awakens. Probably puts it above the prequels, but all three of the original trilogy, as well as Force Awakens, were higher on his list than Rogue One. And I can see that because I read Catalyst, so I had the preview of what was coming in Rogue One. So, yeah, I still stand by my rating of 9.8. It was really, really great. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie. Again, if you want, you can go back and watch my Rogue One spoilers review. It's on the channel. It went up on Friday, and you can see all the things I liked about this movie, the few things that I didn't like about this movie. That's pretty much all I'm going to get into, but go out and see Rogue One because it is a great movie. So now we're going to get into some news here, and there's not a whole lot much news today. So once we go through the quick 2 stories that I have, then we're going to do the best and worst movies of 2016 sci-fi genre. I'm going to run them down, my worst 5, my best 5, and then a whole bunch of honorable mentions. So let's get started. It looks like Rogue One had a few more Easter eggs than even I am capable of seeing. StarWarsNewsNet.com confirmed what I missed spotting Chopper, the lovable droid from Star Wars Rebels in the Yavin 4 scene, the first time the planet is shown. We are also going to get more Saw Gerrera in the Star Wars universe. At Rebels Reactions tweeted this photo of a Rebels poster at a Toys R Us store in the United States. This is good news. I can't wait to see if my prediction is right about the way the Rebels series will end. And what I'm saying about Star Wars Rebels is we're in season 3 right now. Dave Filoni has said we're going to have 5 seasons of Star Wars Rebels. And I truly believe that the last episode of the last season is going to be them going into the Rogue One battle from the movie, because we did see the Ghost in that battle at the end of Rogue One. And I think that we're going to see that battle done from the Ghost's point of view. So we know for sure from the Rogue One movie that we've seen Chopper, and we heard the announcement about Hera, but we don't know the fate of any of the other characters. By the time we get to this battle, some of the characters might already be dead. I truly believe this season Zeb will die in Rebels. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I'm thinking. And so, yeah, I really hope that's how they end Rebels, because it would be a real nice tie into the Star Wars universe. The other piece of news that dropped today that I didn't have a chance to write up, but the teaser trailer for Blade Runner 2049 came out. And it was a very small teaser. It had some amazing shots of the desert. Ryan Gosling is looking for Harrison Ford's character and finds him. And it's a real short teaser, but the cinematography in this teaser trailer looks absolutely phenomenal. I think this is going to be the Blade Runner that I always wanted, because if you've watched what I've said about Blade Runner in the past, it was an okay sci-fi movie, but it was really slow in parts. It dragged on a lot. So it's definitely not one of my favorite movies. Cult classic. You sit around with a whole bunch of group of friends, we'll put it on in the background, have some beers, check out a few cool scenes in it, but not really one of my favorite movies. So, speaking of my favorite movies, let's talk about 2016, a year in review. So we had some real stinkers in 2016, but we also had some amazing movies in 2016. So let's start with my worst. So at number 5, we have Morgan. Now Morgan for me, I was this was one of my most anticipated movies of 2016. I really was excited to go see this, and it fell really short for me. So it's number 5 on the worst. Getting down to number 1 is the absolute worst, but this was number 5 on my worst. Um, the plot was very predictable. It struck me as more of a horror film than a sci-fi film, which was dubbed to be. A few good jarring scenes and catch you off guard scenes. Kate Mara did a pretty good job acting in it, but it was pretty one-toned. So overall, yeah, Morgan didn't fall very good for me. Then we get into my number 4 worst movie, and that's X-Men Apocalypse. Now, with the exception of the first 10 minutes of this movie, which I really enjoyed with the pyramid scene and the history lesson, other than that, this movie was a complete flop for me. Jennifer Lawrence wrote it in. A lot of the characters, it was like, oh, we have a contract, we have to do this movie, but it was nothing. So, yeah, I do not recommend you see it if you haven't. It's not worth your time. Then we get into my number 3 worst movie, which is Allegiant. That was from the Divergent series, and holy stinkers, this movie was awful. Normally you throw a zombie into a movie and I like it. This zombies couldn't even save this movie. This should have been a weekend special TV show, as far as I'm concerned. And I really liked the first one in the Divergent series. I thought it was a good movie, but this one, holy smokes, we got a bad movie. Number 2 worst movie of the year was Gods of Egypt. This movie I almost walked out on. There was no plot. The CG was okay. Special effects, but you probably haven't even heard of it because it was so bad. So don't go see Gods of Egypt. Horrible movie. And my number 1 worst movie of 2016 was Independence Day Resurgence. Um, this movie had the makings of being incredible, even without Will Smith. They got some of the stars back, Bill Pullman, Brent Spiner. They had all these characters come back, and that first movie, Independence Day, it's still one of my Saturday afternoon nothing to do comes on TNT, and I put it on and watch it. And they did this movie such a disservice by putting out the second movie. They should have just left it alone if they weren't going to spend the time and money to put together a really good script with great writers, because this looked like they were just trying to take advantage of the box office success of the first movie and all the fans like me that have grown up watching this movie. This was the biggest stinker for me of 2015. So before we get into what my top 5 favorite sci-fi movies were of 2016, I have a few honorable mentions that I still really enjoyed, critically acclaimed by the critics. Some of these the fans didn't really like them, but I really enjoyed these movies, but they weren't quite good enough to get in my top 5. So the movies that I'd like to talk about, let's go into the almost worst list, was The Purge Election Year. This movie, very similar to the first one, nothing really new about it. Just again, trying to capitalize on the success of the first one. Then we have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a very disappointing follow-up to the Harry Potter movies. It was very one-toned. It was in New York. There was nothing special about the acting. The monsters in it, the CG wasn't that great. So almost made my worst, but those other 5 movies were just worse for me. And then we get into my honorable mentions that I liked a lot was Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I liked the movie, the original in the movie theater release, but I like the Ultimate Edition so much more. It's the movie Zack Snyder wanted to put out. Warner Brothers got in his way. I call it a butchering of Batman v Superman is what the studio did to the theatrical release. But thank God he got to release his Ultimate Edition. I really enjoyed it. I know that's not very popular with a lot of viewers. They didn't like it. Another movie that I really liked was Suicide Squad. I just watched the extended cut, and I didn't really notice a whole lot more in it. There was a few extra scenes, but I really like Suicide Squad. Again, not in my top 5 movies of the year, but it's a really great popcorn movie to go out and enjoy. Doctor Strange. Again, not one of my top movies, but really great action film, really great CGI. I didn't like the ending of it. It had remnants of Green Lantern for me. That's just my opinion. But overall, a good popcorn movie. And Star Trek Beyond almost went in. But if you watch my review that was on the show, the thing I didn't like about this Star Trek movie was it was too much of an action film and not enough of a Star Trek film. They could have put the Guardians of the Galaxy characters into this movie and it would have been just the same movie, because it wasn't a Star Trek movie. It was a great action film. That's just my opinion. Again, let me know in the comment section below what you think of my thoughts on these movies. But now let's get into my top 5 sci-fi movies of the year. So coming in at number 5 was 10 Cloverfield Lane. And this movie was a big surprise for me. It wasn't on my radar. They weren't talking about it very much. And then all of a sudden we got some trailers. I think it was in November or December. And out comes this movie in January. And what a surprise. The ending fell a little bit short for me, but not enough for it not to make my top 5 movies. John Goodman is amazing in this movie. I'm not going to spoil anything on any of these movies. Please go out and see it. This movie was so good. We get into my number 4 movie, and it is Deadpool. This rated R comic book movie I have been waiting for years, and Deadpool did not disappoint. We heard in behind the scenes that Ryan Reynolds had some writers come in. He paid them himself out of his own pocket to make sure they were on set, so if they ran into some script problems, they could just rewrite it right there to make sure that this movie happened, and it happened the way Ryan Reynolds wanted. Deadpool 2's coming out, and Ryan Reynolds let the director go. They parted ways because it's his vision and he wants it his vision, and I'm so glad he did that for Deadpool, coming in at number 4 on my best movies of 2016. Number 3 was Arrival. This movie, I didn't see it coming. I didn't think it was going to be that great, and this movie was from start to finish one of the best put together movies, sci-fi movies, period, not even just of 2016. Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner in it were fantastic. The way that they did the aliens and the plot twists, just incredible. Didn't see it coming. Was very surprised at the end, and that's hard to do for me in a movie because I can usually predict how they're going to end. And this one, I didn't predict it. So go out and see Arrival if you haven't. And then we get into my number 2 and number 1 movies, and I really wrestled back and forth with these two. But I had to go with number 2 as Captain America Civil War. This movie was Avengers 2.5. It had everything you want in a good comic book movie. It had a big fight scene, the airport scene that everybody talks about. Spider-Man got introduced in this movie. Iron Man was on the government side, Tony Stark on the government side, and we have Captain America not on the government side, which was such a cool plot twist and turns everywhere you look. The right amount of comedy, the right amount of action. The CG was incredible in this movie. So well done and well written. Marvel just has the right focus when it comes to these movies, and they could sure teach DC a thing or two. And my number 1 movie of 2016, which I have seen 4 times already and I plan on seeing a whole bunch of times more, is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It was by far a fan service movie. So if you're a huge Star Wars fan, you got to get out and see Rogue One, my number 1 movie of 2016. Please let me know in the comment section below what you think. This has been weekly show number 30. It's going to be the last weekly show of the year for me. We got the Christmas holidays coming up. I am going to put up some other videos during the holidays, but we won't have a weekly show until January now. So signing off for the weekly show. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. If you want to find me, you can go to Twitter at MovieGuySci-Fi, or you can email me, movieguySci-fi@gmail.com. I really apologize for all the people that have sent me emails over the last couple of weeks. I haven't had time to respond to them, but I'm going to do a mailbag episode over the holidays that I'm going to put up. So watch that. You can see me answer your email questions. You can still get some email questions in if you want by sending them to me before probably you got another 4 or 5 days to get them in before I start putting the show rundown together. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and remember everybody, nerds rule the world.